Hey there everyone, it's Brendan here from the Crypto 101 team, and a welcome back to this week's crypto market update. And there's a lot going on that we need to talk about here because the crypto market is seeing new products and services that are reshaping the way that we're looking at the crypto markets. And on top of this, the adoption just is continuing to pour in. And what we're seeing as a result of this is that the crypto market, both Bitcoin and altcoins, are actually doing really well this week. In fact, we're looking to potentially break out of some key resistance levels, and we're going to be talking about all of this in today's market update. So all that we ask is that if you like the content that we put out, consider hitting the like button, consider hitting the subscribe button, and if you really like it, stick around to the end and check out some of those links in the description down below. So what's happening over here with the prices, right? This is where most people are going to be pretty concerned with, right? You know, is it going up? Is it going down? Well, here we can actually see that Bitcoin put in a nice little double bottom last week on Monday and then again on Wednesday. So we came down to around $74,500 right around here. We put in that low on Monday. We came all the way back up to around 81K. We came back here, put in a second low around 74K on Wednesday of last week. And ever since then, Bitcoin has just been steadily increasing back to the upside. In fact, we've seen Bitcoin increase about 16% back upwards just in the last week. This means that Bitcoin has, essentially rose about $12,000 from its low of 74K, which was a new local low, to this new local high of around 86K. Now, why is this happening and what kind of, significance does this hold before we get into the fundamentals? Well, here we can see that this is the exact price level that we saw Bitcoin top out at just last year. So if we're looking at last year's consolidation zone, last year's all-time high, right? This kind of primary area that we tested for the bulk of last year, this is that level that we're looking at. And here you can see that Bitcoin came up to this $74,000, $73,000 level on several different occasions. Now, upon the breakout to the upside, we saw it test here in March. Then we saw it in the end of March. Then we saw it in April. Then in May. Then in June. Then we saw it in July. And then we saw it once again over here around October before the actual breakout happened. So when we're looking at the top of this consolidation zone over here, it's important to understand, hey, this was an area that was very much resistance in the past. Now we're starting to see Bitcoin bounce off of this in the future, and Bitcoin's really putting a lot of pressure into this resistance line. In fact, if we add in some of the moving averages, we can see that Bitcoin is not only putting pressure into this big resistance line that it has on the way down, but also the 200 and the 50-day moving average, which are sitting right here above the price of Bitcoin. So it's a big pivotal moment. I think a lot of people need to be watching out on this, but a lot of the stuff that is driving this fundamental news behind the scenes has to do with what's happening across the board here. Because as I mentioned, we have new products, new services, we have adoption increasing, Bitcoin supply is shrinking, and with this, Bitcoin is performing quite well. Again, about a 16% rise in the last week, or a $12,000 move from bottom to top, is not a small one. It's a really positive thing to see. And holders are getting excited, and I think they rightfully are. So when we look at what's happening here, well, for starters, JPMorgan is adding the GBP support to its blockchain payments services. Now, this is a big deal. I saw that over the last week, the European stablecoin, or the stablecoin for the Europe, I think was up about 40+% in its usage. So what this is saying is that, hey, in the midst of macroeconomic turmoil, in the midst of uncertainty and doubt and this fear that people have had, whether it's warranted or not, when they're looking at this, it's saying, hey, the use case for blockchain, the use case for crypto is not going anywhere. And I've done a ton of videos already on how Bitcoin has been outperforming a lot of traditional assets, things that people would call a competitor to Bitcoin. The S&P 500, the NASDAQ, commodities like gold or oil, whatever you want it to be. And we've made a lot of content just showing about how Bitcoin has outperformed these assets in the short term, the midterm, and the long term. And spoiler alert, I have a little bit more information I want to show on that, a little bit more data that we're going to take a look at in just a second. But again, this really just supports the idea that blockchain and crypto is meant to thrive at a time like this one. And again, it's going to have its ups and downs. We know it's a volatile asset, but it is going to succeed. Again, when maybe one stablecoin is used less, the other ones are going to be picked up more. And in times like this, again, we already see that the crypto markets are doing very, very well. They're holding up. They're not going anywhere. And a lot of the fear that people had about, what's going to happen to the crypto markets in a recession, what's going to happen in a really, really negative time when there's a lot of fear, well, we're getting our answer. It's holding up. In fact, we're seeing different aspects of blockchain actually be utilized more and hold up better in a time when there is so much fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So this is something cool that stuck out to me. But on top of this, we're starting to see Kraken and even some of these other crypto exchanges say, hey, we actually want to offer US stock, things like the Bitcoin ETFs themselves. So what this says is that clients in 10 states will now be able to trade stocks and crypto all from one platform on Kraken. Now, traditionally, I think a lot of us are familiar with the Kraken exchange. They're a centralized exchange, one of the largest ones in the world, one of the more reputable ones in the world. And they're saying, hey, we actually want to be able to list stocks. We want to be able to expand our audience base and say, hey, you can get access to a bunch of different asset classes. And you have to imagine that this is coming after the Bitcoin ETFs are tradable over there. They're going to say, hey, if we can do this, then we can service all of the Bitcoin ETFs, the Ethereum ETFs, any new altcoin ETFs, maybe even support options contracts and all these different forms of trading if we can get approval here. And to be honest, I'm all for this. I actually think this is a really cool idea. Let them do this. Let them expand their cryptocurrency service offerings by dipping their feet into the waters of the stock market. Then people can look at this and they say, hey, I can get MicroStrategy exposure. I can get Coinbase exposure. I can get Marathon exposure. I can get exposure to all these different crypto companies all from a singular place. Again, they're making it easier for everyone. I think everyone's on the team of, hey, let's make this easier. If we can do it all from one place, then we're for that. And I think that's why Robinhood has done so well so far in terms of adoption. And this is that article that I was referencing earlier saying, hey, Circle's EURC stablecoin surged 43% to record supply highs amidst some of the macroeconomic FUD that we've seen here in recent weeks in regards to what's happening with tariffs. So again, the crypto market's here to stay. One event happens, it raises support for another industry. And it's just a seesaw. So it's cool to see that the crypto market is holding true. And again, just another way that we can look at this and say, hey, this thing is global. No matter what happens, this stuff is here to stay. It's not going anywhere. And it gives me a little bit more security, right? It helps me sleep a little bit better at night. Another thing that I saw come out here was that MetaPlanet has now become the 10th largest public Bitcoin holder with their latest Bitcoin buy. This is a big deal. For a while, people brushed MetaPlanet off. They said, these are small fries. They're buying, 1, 10, 100 Bitcoin at a time. They're nothing compared to MicroStrategy. They're nothing compared to Marathon. They're nothing compared to some of these other players. And now, again, slowly but surely, they have been accumulating, and it's starting to pay off. So what we're seeing with this, and I think I have a chart somewhere in here that references this, maybe not, so we might have to come back to it. But again, when they are accumulating Bitcoin the way that they have over here, they're saying, hey, we believe in this long term. And a lot of companies have really started to take after the MicroStrategy or now strategy approach of, hey, let's just accumulate Bitcoin on the dips. This thing is going to appreciate. We know what it's done over the course of the last 14 years. And to show that to you, I thought, what better way to show what Bitcoin has done over the last 14 years than this awesome chart by our good buddy Matt Hougan, who we've had on the podcast several times. And he says Bitcoin has outperformed the S&P 500 over the past 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way up to 14-year periods. And he accompanied this with a nice little graphic saying, well, let's look at the return rates of Bitcoin in year 1 and 2, 3, and as it compounded over one another. And it really, really started to accelerate. When you compare this to gold, again, there's 1 or 2 instances in here where we can say, hey, we had some nasty bear markets and gold was beating it for a short period of time. But no matter how you look at this, over the long term, especially in recent years, Bitcoin has been outperforming a lot of these assets that it is compared to. It's been outperforming gold. It's been outperforming the S&P. It's been outperforming NASDAQ. It's been outperforming, just about anything that you could compare it to. And there's a reason why it's been one of the most successful ETF launches. In fact, I would say the most successful ETF launch in history. And it's just over a year old, not even a year and a half old yet. So we're seeing a lot of positive things from this front. And on the same kind of line of what we were just talking about here, Bitwise just published a nice little corporate report that I was reading through this morning. So if you want to pause this here, go ahead and pause this. It actually offers some really, really interesting data points that I just wanted to make sure that everyone had available, because it just presents you with a bit more substance into what's actually happening behind the scenes, especially when it comes to some of these companies that are holding Bitcoin. Again, MicroStrategy definitely in first place there in terms of companies that are holding Bitcoin. But then you have Marathon, then you have Riot right behind them, you have CleanSpark, and even Tesla up there with a little over 11,500 Bitcoin still on their balance sheet. So if you look at Bitcoin's quarterly holdings, this is going up and to the right. Bitcoin is continuing to be adopted. What does this mean? Well, as more adoption happens, as more holders get their hands on Bitcoin, the supply is being reduced, which is pushing appreciation back to the upside. So when we're looking at the future of crypto and what's happening here, trust me, I understand. It's a volatile time. We've seen some big moves here in recent weeks, and I'm going to be completely honest with all of you. I think moving forward, we're going to see more moves like this. We're going to see some nasty moves down, but guess what? They're going to be followed by even greater moves to the upside. So buckle up. We're going to have big moves down. We're going to have even bigger moves up. There's going to continue to be a lot of volatility. I don't see that going away for the foreseeable future, but I think that it's on these dips when Bitcoin pulls back that we look at this and we say, man, we kind of reassure ourselves why we are accumulating in the first place, which is why I look at this as such an opportunistic area, especially as Bitcoin has been peaking its head below 80K, closer to 70K in these levels. I'm looking at it saying, man, this looks just like an ideal accumulation zone. And we see companies doing the same thing. So adoption is increasing. Things are looking good on the horizon. And we have a lot going on here for everyone. So thank you all for watching. If you like this video, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, because we have a lot more content coming your way. Now, if you are new here and you want to get plugged into an awesome crypto community, you can check out the links in the description down below. My good buddy Bryce Paul wrote a book called The Crypto Revolution that you can check out. Or you can get plugged into our crypto community called Crypt Nation, where you can join thousands of other like-minded individuals and talk about everything that you're interested in. Go through all the topics, trades, news, whatever it may be, even your favorite altcoins, and talk about it in there as well. So thank you all for watching, and I'll see all of you at the same time, same place next week.